I'll never forget the look on my sister's face when I dropped those legal documents onto the Christmas dinner table. 1 second, she was announcing her promotion, basking in applause, her hand resting on her CEO boyfriend's shoulder. The next second, she was staring at a $2 million lawsuit with her name on it. "Merry Christmas, Laya," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "I brought you a present too." The room went dead silent. 20 guests, including half the company's board of directors, watched my perfect sister's face drain of colour as she read the words intellectual property theft, fraud, embezzlement. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish. This was the moment I'd been building toward for 3 years. 3 years of being invisible. 3 years of watching her steal my work, my credit, my life. 3 years of playing the role of the family doormat while I quietly collected evidence. But tonight, the doormat was done being walked on. But before I tell you how I got here, before I explain how the family punching bag became the one throwing the punches, I need you to do something for me. If you're enjoying this story of revenge and redemption, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because, trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me if you've ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep sharing these stories. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 2 years and 3 weeks before that Christmas dinner, I stood in the back corner of the Plaza Hotel ballroom, wearing a borrowed black dress that was half a size too small. The annual gala fundraiser for Morrison Enterprises was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across hundreds of guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Somewhere in that glittering crowd was my sister Laya preparing to accept an award I had earned. I had spent 6 months developing the marketing campaign that saved Morrison Enterprises from bankruptcy. 6 months of 18-hour days of missed meals and sleepless nights of pouring every ounce of creativity I possessed into a strategy that would revolutionize their brand. The campaign was brilliant. I knew it was brilliant. Everyone who saw it knew it was brilliant. But the name on the presentation, the name that would be courted to the stage, the name that would be etched onto a crystal trophy, was Laya Hale. My sister had a gift for taking credit. She'd been doing it since we were children, when she'd win science fairs with projects I'd researched and art competitions with drawings I'd sketched. Our parents never questioned it. Why would they? Laya was the golden child, the one with the perfect smile and the networking skills and the ability to make everyone in a room feel like they were the most important person she'd ever met. I was just Serenity, the quiet one, the one who did the actual work while Laya collected the accolades. And now, the MC's voice boomed through the sound system. "Please, welcome to the stage this year's recipient of the Innovation Award, Laya Hale." The applause was thunderous. I watched my sister glide across the floor in a crimson dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The dress I had stayed up until 3 a.m. to repair after she'd snagged it on her car door. She hadn't said thank you. She never did. Laya took the microphone with practiced grace. "Thank you so much," she gushed, her voice dripping with false humility. "This campaign was such a labour of love. I spent countless nights perfecting every detail, every message, every visual element. I'm so grateful for this recognition." Lie. Every single word was a lie, and she delivered them with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her right to steal from me. I felt someone bump into me from behind. "Excuse me," a sharp voice said. "Kitchen staff aren't supposed to be in the main ballroom." I turned to find a server in a crisp white jacket, looking at me with undisguised disdain. He was staring at my dress, at the slight wrinkle in the fabric where I tried to press out a stain at my shoes that were practical rather than fashionable. "I'm not kitchen staff," I said quietly. "I'm a guest." "Right." His tone made it clear he didn't believe me. "Look, if you need to use the restroom, the employee facilities are down that hallway, but you really shouldn't be out here." Before I could protest, he was already guiding me toward the service entrance, his hand firm on my elbow. I could have argued. I could have shown him my invitation, could have made a scene, could have demanded to be treated with respect. But what was the point? This was my life. This had always been my life. Invisible, disposable, unworthy of basic courtesy. The kitchen was hot and chaotic, full of shouting chefs and clattering dishes. I stood there for a moment surrounded by strangers who at least had the excuse of not knowing who I was, and felt the familiar weight of resignation settle over my shoulders. This was my place, apparently, in the back, in the shadows, anywhere but where I deserved to be. I was about to leave through the service exit when Laya appeared in the doorway, trophy in one hand, champagne flute in the other. She saw me and smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted wounded prey. "Serenity!" She called out loud enough that several kitchen workers turned to look. "What are you doing back here?" "Oh my God, did someone mistake you for the help? That's hilarious. She walked toward me, her heels clicking on the tile floor. I could smell her perfume, expensive and cloying. When she got close enough, she tilted her champagne glass, and before I could react, she poured the entire contents down the front of my dress. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric, instantly staining it a deep burgundy. Gasps and nervous laughter rippled through the kitchen. Laya's smile widened. "Oops," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm so clumsy, but honestly, Ren, that dress was pretty cheap anyway. I'm kind of doing you a favour. Now you have an excuse to throw it away." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab that crystal trophy and smash it against the stainless steel counter. I wanted to tell everyone in that kitchen exactly who had created the campaign my sister was being celebrated for. But I didn't. I just stood there dripping champagne and humiliation while Laya laughed. She leaned in, close, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "You know what the best part is? Mum and Dad are out there right now, telling everyone how proud they are of me. Of me, Serenity. Not you, never you. Because you're nothing but a ghost, and ghosts don't get trophies." Then she was gone, sweeping back out to the ballroom where our parents were undoubtedly waiting to bask in her reflected glory. I looked down at my ruined dress, at the puddle of champagne forming at my feet, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. It wasn't a sudden burst of courage or anger. It was quieter than that, colder. It was the sound of a door closing. I left through the service entrance without saying goodbye to anyone. The December air bit through my wet dress, but I barely felt it. I walked 12 blocks to the subway station because I couldn't afford a cab, and during that walk, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Laya. I wasn't going to demand recognition or respect or basic human decency. I was going to be patient. I was going to be strategic. I was going to build a case so airtight that when I finally chose to spring the trap, there would be no escape. The next morning, I went to work at Morrison Enterprises like nothing had happened. Laya was already there, of course, holding court in the break room and regaling our co-workers with stories about the gala. She saw me walk in, and her smile turned sharp. "Serenity, did you have fun last night? Sorry I didn't get to spend more time with you, but you know how it is when you're accepting awards." She said it casually, but I could see the challenge in her eyes. She wanted me to react. She wanted me to give her an excuse to put me in my place. "Congratulations," I said flatly. The campaign deserved the recognition. She looked almost disappointed by my lack of resistance. "Well, I couldn't have done it without my team's support. You helped with some of the research, didn't you? The boring stuff." I had written every word of that campaign. I had designed every visual. I had pitched it to the client and answered every technical question. But all I said was, "Happy to help." That became my mantra over the next 2 years. Happy to help. I said it when Laya demanded I work through weekends to prepare presentations she would deliver. I said it when she took credit for my designs in client meetings. I said it when she asked me to lie to her boyfriend about where she'd been the night before. Happy to help. But while I was saying those words, I was also doing something else. I was documenting everything. Every email Laya sent asking me to complete her work I forwarded to a private account. every file she accessed from my computer without permission, I tracked with monitoring software I'd quietly installed. Every time she submitted something under her name that I had created, I kept time-stamped backups with metadata proving I was the original author. I created a meticulous record of intellectual property theft, fraud, and corporate misconduct. I also started paying attention to Morrison Enterprises' operations in ways I never had before. I noticed that Laya had access to financial accounts she shouldn't have touched. I noticed discrepancies in expense reports. I noticed that money earmarked for department budgets was being redirected in ways that didn't make sense. I wasn't looking for dirt on my sister. I was simply being thorough. But what I found was damning. Laya had been embezzling company funds for over a year. Not enormous amounts, but enough to matter. Enough to constitute a serious crime. She'd hidden it well, routing the money through various departmental accounts and covering her tracks with altered documentation. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed nobody was watching. She'd assumed I was too meek, too beaten down, too grateful for whatever scraps of acknowledgement she threw my way to ever pose a threat. She was wrong. During this time, I also got to know Adrian Morrison better. He was the CEO of Morrison Enterprises, the son of the founder, and technically my boss several times removed. He was also Laya's boyfriend, though I use that term loosely. Their relationship seemed to consist primarily of Laya attending high society events on his arm, and Adrian looking vaguely uncomfortable whenever she spoke. Adrian was nothing like the other executives I'd encountered. He was sharp and observant, with eyes that seemed to catalogue everything and miss nothing. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it was genuine. He treated the junior staff with the same respect he showed senior management. And he had been watching Laya. I realised this one afternoon, about 6 months before Christmas, when I stayed late to finish a project. I was alone in the design department, or so I thought, when Adrian appeared in the doorway. Serenity Hale, correct? His voice was neutral professional. I stood up quickly, nearly knocking over my coffee. Yes, Mr. Morrison, is there something you need? I need honesty. He walked into the room and closed the door behind him. The Bradshaw campaign that launched last month. The one Laya presented to the board. Did you work on that? My heart started pounding. This was it. This was where I could tell the truth, could expose everything, could finally get the recognition I deserved. But something in his expression made me pause. He wasn't asking because he didn't know. He was asking because he wanted to see if I would lie. I contributed to the research and design, I said carefully. That's not what I asked. He sat down in the chair across from my desk. His posture relaxed, but his gaze intense. I've been reviewing project files. Digital footprints are fascinating things. They tell you who created what and when. They show you patterns of behaviour. They reveal truths that people would rather keep hidden. I said nothing. My mouth had gone dry. You created that entire campaign, Adrian continued. You created the Morrison rebrand that saved this company. You've created every made successful pitch we've had in the last 18 months. And Laya has taken credit for all of it. He paused. The question is, why do you let her? She's my sister. It was the only explanation I had, and it sounded pathetic even to my own ears. That's not an answer. That's an excuse. He leaned forward. I'm going to be direct with you, Serenity. I've known for months that Laya is a fraud. I've also known that she's been stealing from this company. I've been building a case against her, collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment to act. Then why haven't you fired her? The question escaped before I could stop it. Because I'm not interested in just firing her. I want to make sure she never works in this industry again. I want to recover every penny she's stolen and make her face real consequences for what she's done. And I suspect you want the same thing. He was right. God help me. He was absolutely right. But I need your help, Adrian said. I need access to files she's deleted from company servers. I need evidence of the intellectual property theft from your personal perspective. I need someone on the inside who can document her actions without arousing suspicion. Can you do that? This was dangerous. This was a betrayal of family, however dysfunctional that family might be. This was crossing a line from which there would be no return. Yes, I said, I can do that. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened slightly. She'll hurt you before this is over. When people like Laya feel threatened, they lash out at the people they've always been able to hurt with impunity. Can you handle that? I thought about the champagne-soaked dress. I thought about the trophy with my sister's name on it. I thought about every time my parents had told me I should be more like Laya, should try harder, should be grateful for whatever crumbs of affection they deigned to throw my way. I've been handling it my whole life, I said. What's a little more? Over the next 6 months, Adrian and I worked together in secret. We met in coffee shops, far from the office, in parking garages, once in a public library, where we pretended to be strangers researching in the same section. He taught me how to build a legal case, how to document evidence in ways that would hold up in court, how to anticipate Laya's moves and counter them before she even knew what was happening. We also talked about other things. Our childhoods, our dreams, the crushing weight of family expectations and the suffocating nature of inherited obligations. Adrian had grown up in wealth and privilege, expected to take over his father's company, whether he wanted to or not. I had grown up in middle-class aspiration, expected to support my sister's rise to success, whether I benefited or not. We were both trapped in roles we'd never chosen, and somewhere in those late-night conversations, we became something more than co-conspirators. We became friends. And then, 3 weeks before Christmas, Laya made her move. Morrison Enterprises had the opportunity to pitch for the Castellano account, a multi-million-dollar contract that would secure the company's future for years to come. The pitch was due in 2 weeks. Adrian had assigned the project to a team that included both Laya and me, but everyone knew this was a test. Whoever delivered the winning strategy would be promoted to vice president. Laya wanted that promotion. More than that, she wanted to ensure I could never threaten her position again. She called me on a Sunday evening, her voice syrupy with false sweetness. "Ren, sweetie, I need a huge favour. The Castellano pitch is kicking my butt, and I know you're so much better at the technical stuff than I am. Could you maybe help me put together the presentation, just the data and design work? I'll handle the actual pitch, obviously. Just the data and design work. In other words, the entire substance of the presentation." "Of course," I said. "When do you need it?" "Wednesday morning. I know that's tight, but I have so much going on with the holiday preparations and Adrian's family obligations. You understand, right?" Wednesday morning was 3 days away. Creating a pitch of this magnitude would require working around the clock. It would require access to proprietary client research and competitive analysis that took weeks to compile. It would require sacrificing sleep, health, and any semblance of a personal life. "No problem," I said. "I'll get it done." "You're the best, sis." The false affection in her voice made my skin crawl. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd have to do your own work," I thought. "You'd have to actually earn your salary. You'd have to face the reality that you're a mediocre talent who's been coasting on stolen ideas your entire career." But all I said was, "Happy to help." I hung up the phone and immediately texted Adrian. "She's going to take the Castellano pitch. I'm giving her the bait. Are we ready for the next phase?" His response came back within seconds. "Almost. One more thing needs to happen first. Trust me." I trusted him. I didn't entirely understand why, but I did. I spent the next 72 hours creating the most brilliant pitch of my career. I analysed Castellano Industries' market position, identified opportunities they hadn't even recognised themselves, and developed a comprehensive strategy that would revolutionise their brand presence. I designed mock-ups and prototypes. I wrote copy that sang. I built financial projections that demonstrated not just viability, but explosive growth potential. And I built in a trap. Embedded in the presentation files was metadata that would prove I was the creator. Hidden in the code of the digital assets were timestamps and digital signatures that couldn't be altered or deleted without destroying the files themselves. I also created a complete backup of everything, and uploaded it to a secure cloud server that only I could access. If Laya took this pitch and claimed it as her own, she would be handing me irrefutable proof of intellectual property theft. I delivered the files to her on Wednesday morning, bleary-eyed and exhausted from 3 days of non-stop work. She barely looked at them before uploading them to her own system. "Thanks, Rentus," she said dismissively. "This is exactly what I needed. You're so good at this grunt work." Grunt work? I had just handed her a multi-million-dollar strategy and she called it grunt work. That night, Laya came to my apartment. I lived in a tiny studio in a building that had seen better decades. The heat was unreliable, the neighbours were loud, and the plumbing made sounds that suggested imminent catastrophe. But it was mine, paid for with money I earned, and it represented a kind of independence my sister would never understand. She didn't knock. She had a key that I'd never given her permission to copy, and she used it like she owned the place. I looked up from my laptop to find her standing in my living room, her designer coat completely out of place against my thrift store furniture. "I need the master files," she said without preamble. "What?" I closed my laptop. "I gave you everything this morning." "No, you gave me PDFs and locked presentation files. I need the raw files, the ones I can edit and customize." This was it. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Those files are proprietary work product. I can't just hand them over without proper authorization." Laya's expression hardened. She crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed my laptop before I could react. I lunged for it, but she was faster, holding it out of reach while she tried to unlock it with her other hand. "Give that back," I shouted. "I need those files, Serenity." Her voice was cold now, stripped of any pretense of sisterly affection. "And you're going to give them to me because that's what you do. You're a worker bee. I'm the queen. That's how this works." She managed to get into my laptop. I deliberately left it unlocked, knowing this moment would come. She found the folder containing the master files and inserted a thumb drive, beginning the transfer process. "You can't just steal my work," I said, putting as much desperation into my voice as I could manage. "I'm not stealing anything. You work for Morrison Enterprises. Morrison Enterprises owns your work. And as a senior member of the team, I have every right to access company resources." She said it with such confidence, such absolute certainty in her right to take whatever she wanted. The files finished copying. Laya pulled out the thumb drive, and then, in a move that shocked me despite all my preparation, she dropped my laptop onto the floor. The screen cracked. She raised her foot and brought her heel down on the keyboard once, twice, 3 times until the device was thoroughly destroyed. "Oops," she said, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. "Sorry about that. I guess you'll need to file a damage report with IT. Although, honestly, that laptop was ancient anyway. You should have upgraded years ago." I stared at the broken pieces of my computer, at the malicious glee in my sister's eyes, and I felt nothing. No anger, no surprise, just a cold, calm satisfaction that she had played exactly into my hands. She had just committed destruction of property on camera. I had installed a wireless security camera in my apartment 2 months ago, disguised as a smoke detector. Everything that had just happened was recorded in high definition and automatically uploaded to a cloud server. "Get out," I said quietly. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my apartment. Now," Laya laughed. "Or what, you'll tell Mom and Dad, go ahead. They won't believe you. They never do. You're the family disappointment, remember? The one who couldn't make it on her own talent. The one who needs constant help and guidance. I'm doing you a favour by letting you work on my projects. You should be grateful." She left, then taking her stolen files and her delusions of superiority with her. I waited until I heard her footsteps fade down the hallway before I picked up my phone and called Dad Adrian. "She took the bait," I said. "All of it." He sounded tense. "All of it. And she destroyed my laptop for good measure. It's all on video." There was a long pause. Then, "Are you okay?" Was I okay? I looked around my broken apartment with its broken computer and broken family relationships, and I realised that yes, I was okay. Better than okay. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the victim. I was the one in control. "I'm perfect," I said. "What's the next move?" "We wait. Let her submit the pitch. Let her bask in the preliminary approval, and then we invite her to celebrate at your family's Christmas dinner. My family's Christmas dinner, and they'll make this entire evening about Laya. It'll be insufferable. Exactly. That's the point. We let her think she's won. We let her have her moment of triumph. And then we take everything away from her in front of the people whose approval she values most. It was cruel, it was calculated, it was perfect. The next 2 weeks passed in a surreal haze. Laya submitted the Castellano pitch under her name and received preliminary approval from the client. She was ecstatic, already planning how she would redecorate her new vice president office. My parents called to congratulate her, spending 45 minutes on the phone, gushing about her brilliance and dedication. Nobody called to thank me for my contribution. Nobody ever did. Adrian, meanwhile, was working behind the scenes with the company's legal team and an external law firm that specialized in corporate fraud. The case against Laya was airtight. We had evidence of intellectual property theft spanning 3 years. We had documentation of embezzlement totaling over $200,000. We had video evidence of her destroying my property and stealing proprietary files. The only question was when to spring the trap. Adrian chose Christmas dinner. My mother had been planning this dinner for months. It was her annual opportunity to showcase the Hale family's success to a carefully curated list of guests that included neighbours, business associates, and anyone else she wanted to impress. The house would be decorated like a magazine spread. The food would be catered by the same company that served the mayor's holiday parties. Everything would be perfect, at least on the surface. I hadn't wanted to go. The thought of sitting through another evening of watching my parents fawn over Laya while treating me like decorative furniture made me physically ill. But Adrian had insisted. This has to happen in front of witnesses, he'd said. People she respects, people whose opinions matter to her. Otherwise, she'll just dismiss it as a private dispute and move on with her life. We need to destroy her credibility completely. So I had agreed, and Adrian had called my mother to ask if he could attend dinner with Laya since they were getting serious, and he wanted to meet the extended family. My mother had nearly fainted with excitement. Adrian Morrison, CEO of Morrison Enterprises, wanted to come to her Christmas dinner. She'd immediately expanded the guest list to include several members of the company's board of directors, key clients, and every Hale family relation who might witness her daughter's triumph. She had no idea she was setting the stage for Laya's complete destruction. Christmas Eve arrived, cold and clear. I took a cab to my parents' house in Riverside Park, watching the familiar streets slide past the window. This was the neighbourhood where I'd grown up, where I'd learned that love was conditional, and approval had to be earned through service to Laya's ambitions. Every block held memories of being overlooked, undervalued, and underestimated. The house looked like something from a holiday movie. White lights draped every surface. A massive wreath hung on the front door. Through the windows, I could see the glitter of crystal and silver, the warm glow of candles, the elegant silhouettes of early arrivals already sipping champagne. I sat in the cab for a long moment, gathering my courage. I was wearing a new dress, the first expensive piece of clothing I'd ever bought for myself. It was deep blue, simple but elegant, and it made me feel like someone worth noticing. I'd done my hair and makeup carefully. I wanted to look good for this. I wanted them to see what they'd been missing all these years. When I walked through the front door, my mother looked at me with barely concealed disapproval. "Serenity, you're late, and that dress is rather bold, don't you think? You know how Laya hates being upstaged." "Merry Christmas, Mum," I said evenly. My father appeared from the living room, his attention already wandering back to the guests. "Oh, good, you're here. Laya needs help in the kitchen. Something about the presentation of the appetizers. Go make yourself useful." Of course, that's why they wanted me here. Not because I was their daughter, not because this was supposed to be a family celebration, but because they needed a servant. I found Laya in the kitchen directing the catering staff like a general commanding troops. She saw me, and her eyes narrowed slightly at my dress, but she covered it quickly with a bright smile. "Ren, perfect timing. I need you to arrange these canapes on serving platters. The staff is completely incompetent." She gestured at the professional caterers, who were doing a perfectly adequate job. Actually, I'm a guest tonight, I said, not staff. Her smile froze. Don't be difficult. This is important. Adrian is here with several board members and everything needs to be perfect. Then I'm sure the professional caterers you hired can handle it. Before she could respond, Adrian appeared in the doorway. He looked devastating in a tailored black suit, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp and assessing. He'd been taking notes all evening, I knew, watching how my family treated me, cataloguing the casual cruelties and dismissive comments. Laya, darling, he said smoothly, the Hendersons are asking for you. Something about a charity board position. Laya's face lit up. The Hendersons were old money, the kind of connection she'd been chasing for years. She forgot about me, instantly smoothing her dress and checking her reflection in the polished chrome of the refrigerator. How do I look? She asked Adrian. Stunning, as always. The lie came easily to him. He'd been playing this role for months now. The devoted boyfriend, the successful CEO considering marriage to the brilliant marketing executive. Only I knew the truth behind his facade. After Laya swept out of the kitchen, Adrian turned to me. Are you ready for this? Are you? I've been ready since the day I discovered what she was doing to you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thumb drive. This contains every piece of evidence we've compiled. Financial records, email correspondences, the video from your apartment, expert testimony from forensic accountants, a formal complaint from Morrison Enterprises, and a lawsuit filed jointly by the company and you personally. And my hands were shaking as I took the drive. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. We've planned for every contingency. The board members here tonight have already been briefed. They know what's about to happen. They're witnesses, not participants, but their presence ensures Laya can't claim this is a personal vendetta. He paused. After tonight, there's no going back. You understand that, right? Your family will never forgive you. They never accepted me anyway, I said. At least this way I'll have my dignity. Dinner was a lavish affair. The table groaned under the weight of roasted turkey, honey-glazed ham and sides that would have fed 3 times as many people. My mother had outdone herself, creating a display that screamed wealth and taste, even if both were more aspiration than reality. I was seated at the far end of the table, of course. The children's end, even though I was 26 years old. Laya and Adrian held court at the centre, flanked by board members and important guests. My parents hovered nearby, basking in reflected glory. The conversation flowed easily, lubricated by expensive wine and the glow of holiday cheer. Laya regaled everyone with stories of her success at Morrison Enterprises, carefully editing out any mention of the people who actually did the work. She dropped hints about an upcoming promotion, about exciting new responsibilities, about her brilliant future. And then, after the main course had been cleared and before dessert arrived, my mother stood up with a champagne glass and a smile that could have powered the city lights. Everyone, if I could have your attention, please? She waited for silence. I want to take a moment to celebrate my eldest daughter, Laya. As many of you know, she's been doing extraordinary work at Morrison Enterprises, and we're so proud of her accomplishments. But tonight, we have even more to celebrate. She gestured to Laya, who stood up with practiced grace. Adrian remained seated, his expression unreadable. I am thrilled to announce, Laya said, her voice carrying across the room, that I've been selected for promotion to Vice President of Marketing. The official announcement will come in January, but I wanted to share this joy with the people who matter most. Applause erupted around the table. My father was beaming. My mother had tears in her eyes. Several of the board members exchanged glances, but they stayed silent. They were waiting. Laya wasn't done. She turned to me, and in that moment I saw the full extent of her malice. She'd planned this. She'd choreographed it carefully. And Serenity, she said, her voice dripping with false affection, I have a special gift for you, little sister, to thank you for all your support. A wrapped box appeared, delivered by one of the catering staff. It was large and festively decorated, and every eye in the room turned toward it. Laya handed it to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Open it," she urged. I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a toilet cleaning kit: brush, bleach, rubber gloves, and a bottle of industrial-strength cleaner. Laughter rippled around the table, nervous at first, then growing bolder, as people saw my parents weren't intervening. "I thought it suited you," Laya said sweetly. "You've always been better at the grunt work than the creative stuff. Maybe it's time to embrace your calling." More laughter. My mother was chuckling behind her hand. My father had already turned away, dismissing me as he'd always dismissed me. The board members looked uncomfortable, but still they said nothing. This was my moment. This was the apex of their cruelty, the peak of their certainty that I would take this humiliation and swallow it silently, as I always had. This was when they expected me to smile weakly, to make some self-deprecating joke, to fade back into invisibility, while they moved on to dessert and holiday toasts. Instead, I stood up. The laughter died away, replaced by puzzled looks. I reached into my purse and pulled out the thumb drive Adrian had given me, along with a stack of legal documents I'd had delivered to the house earlier and hidden in the coat closet. "Actually, Laya," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I have a gift for you too." I walked around the table to where she stood, her smile beginning to falter. I set the documents down in front of her with a crisp thud that silenced the entire room. "This is a lawsuit for intellectual property theft, fraud, embezzlement, and destruction of property. The total damages being sought are just over $2 million. The evidence has been compiled over 3 years and includes video documentation, forensic analysis, and testimony from multiple witnesses." The colour drained from Laya's face. She looked down at the documents, at the official seals and legal letterhead, and I watched the realization dawn that this was real. "You're fired, effective immediately," Adrian said, his voice cutting through the shocked silence. He stood up and his entire demeanour changed. The indulgent boyfriend was gone, replaced by the CEO who had built a multi-million-dollar empire. "You violated your employment contract, your non-disclosure agreement, and approximately 47 different company policies. Security will pack your desk tomorrow. You're barred from all Morrison properties indefinitely." My mother found her voice. "This is ridiculous, Adrian. Surely there's been some misunderstanding. Laya would never." "She stole over $200,000 from company accounts," Adrian interrupted. "She submitted work created by Serenity under her own name for 3 consecutive years. She destroyed company property and threatened a fellow employee. There is no misunderstanding. There are only facts, and the facts are damning." I turned to my parents. This was the part I'd been dreading, but also the part I needed most. "And you're not innocent either," I said. "Do you remember my college scholarship, the full ride to Parsons School of Design that I earned? You told me I didn't get it. You said I wasn't good enough. But I was. I found the acceptance letter in Dad's desk 3 years ago when I was helping Mum look for tax documents. You threw it away. You destroyed my chance at a real education because you needed me here to support Laya's career." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father started to sputter a defense, but I wasn't finished. "You also misappropriated the education fund Grandma left for me. You used it to buy Laya's car. That's financial fraud and misuse of trust funds. I've reported it to the IRS along with documentation of several other questionable financial decisions. They'll be contacting you after the holiday." The room had gone absolutely silent. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. Everyone was staring at us at the picture-perfect family Christmas, dissolving into accusations and legal threats. Laya finally found her voice. "You can't do this. You're nobody. You're nothing without me, without this family." "No," I said calmly, "you're nothing without me. Every success you've had, every award you've won, every promotion you've received was built on my work, and now everyone knows it." She lunged at me, her face contorted with rage. Board members jumped up to intervene, and Adrian stepped between us. The elegant Christmas dinner had descended into chaos. "You've ruined everything," Laya screamed. "You pathetic, jealous, worthless little parasite. I gave you a purpose. I gave you a reason to exist. You stole from me, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. You stole my work, my opportunities, my dignity, and my family's respect. And tonight, I'm taking it all back. Security arrived, then 2 professionals that Adrian had positioned outside the house. They escorted a screaming, cursing Laya out of the dining room and out of the house. The front door slammed behind them, and the silence that followed was deafening. My parents stood frozen, their faces pale. The carefully constructed image they'd spent decades building had shattered in a matter of minutes. The board members began making polite excuses and heading for the door. Within 15 minutes, the house was nearly empty. My father tried one last time. Serenity, please. We can fix this. We're family. We can work through this together. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time. Not as the patriarch I'd spent my whole life trying to please, but as a weak, selfish man who had sacrificed one daughter's happiness for another daughter's ego. We stopped being family the day you threw away my acceptance letter, I said. I was 17 years old and I trusted you to want the best for me. But you never did. You never saw me as anything more than a tool to make Laya look good. That's not true, my mother whispered. We love you. No, you don't. You love what I could do for you. There's a difference. I picked up my coat. Don't contact me. Don't try to apologize. Don't attempt to salvage this. It's over. All of it. I walked out of that house, and I didn't look back. Adrian found me on the front steps, sitting in the cold December air and watching my breath mist in front of me. He sat down beside me without speaking, and we stayed like that for a long time. Your family will try to fix this, he finally said. They'll hire lawyers. They'll spread their own version of events. They'll try to paint you as the villain. Let them try. We have evidence. We have truth. That's more than they've ever had. What will you do now? I thought about it. For the first time in my life, the future was entirely mine to shape. No family obligations, no sister to support, no parents to placate, just me and the choices I would make. I am going to be who I was always supposed to be, I said, starting tomorrow. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new office at Morrison Enterprises with my name on the door, Director of Creative Strategy. It wasn't Vice President, but it was earned, legitimate, and entirely mine. Adrian had offered me Laya's old position, but I declined. I wanted something I'd built from scratch, not something handed to me from her wreckage. The lawsuit was proceeding smoothly. Laya's lawyers had tried to negotiate a settlement, but Adrian and I had refused. This wasn't about money. This was about accountability. She would face every consequence of her actions, and she would do it publicly. My parents had tried to call 17 times. I'd blocked their numbers after the 3rd attempt. They'd sent letters. I'd returned them unopened. They'd shown up at my new apartment once, but building security had turned them away. I was done giving them chances to hurt me. The local news had picked up the story. Corporate fraud was always good for ratings, especially when it involved a photogenic young woman who'd been stealing from her own sister. The coverage wasn't flattering to Laya or my parents. The court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Laya was doing community service to work off her fines. She'd been blacklisted from every major company in the industry. Her perfect life had collapsed completely, and I felt no satisfaction in it, no joy, just a quiet sense of justice served. On New Year's Eve, Adrian invited me to dinner at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. We sat by the window, watching snow fall over Manhattan, and toasted with the same type of champagne Laya had poured on me 2 years before. Do you regret it? He asked, burning it all down. I thought about my family. I thought about the Christmases I wouldn't attend, the birthdays that would pass without cause, the weddings and funerals, where I'd be notably absent. I thought about the hollow space where family should have been. And then I thought about my new office, my growing reputation, the creative work I was doing under my own name. I thought about sleeping peacefully, without the weight of resentment and stolen credit pressing down on my chest. I thought about the future I was building brick by brick on a foundation of truth and earned respect. No, I said, I don't regret any of it. He smiled, and it was genuine. Good, because I have something for you." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Parsons School of Design. They'd reviewed my portfolio, the one I'd submitted on a whim after leaving my family. They were offering me a place in their graduate program with a full scholarship. I could finally get the education I'd been denied. I looked up at Adrian, tears blurring my vision. "How did you—" I made some calls, pulled some strings. Your talent speaks for itself, Serenity. It always has. Some people just weren't listening. That night, as midnight approached and the city erupted in celebration, I made a resolution. Not to forgive my family, because some betrayals are too deep for that. Not to forget what they had done, because those scars had shaped who I'd become. But to release them. To let go of the anger and hurt and disappointment, and to walk forward into a future they couldn't touch. I had spent 26 years being invisible, being dismissed, being used. I had let my sister steal my work and my parents steal my dreams because I believed that was what love required. Sacrifice, silence, endless patience in the face of endless cruelty. But I had been wrong. That wasn't love. That was abuse, dressed up in holiday wrapping paper and tied with a bow of family obligation. Real love doesn't demand you diminish yourself. Real love doesn't take credit for your accomplishments. Real love doesn't destroy your laptop and mock you in front of strangers. Real love doesn't throw away your acceptance letters or steal your inheritance. Real love sees you, respects you, celebrates you. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't do that, then they don't deserve a place in your life, no matter what biology or tradition might say. I learned that lesson on a cold Christmas night, surrounded by the wreckage of relationships that were never healthy to begin with. I learned it while watching my sisters' masks slip and my parents' true priorities reveal themselves. I learned it in the moment I chose truth over peace, justice over family harmony myself, over everyone who had ever asked me to be smaller. It was the best gift I ever received. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. If you're in a relationship, any relationship where you're constantly sacrificing but never celebrated, where your contributions are taken for granted and your boundaries are trampled, where you're expected to shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable, then you have a choice to make. You can keep playing that role, keep hoping that one day they'll finally see your value. Keep waiting for appreciation that will never come. Or you can do what I did. You can gather your evidence. You can build your case. You can choose yourself, even when it's terrifying, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted, even when it means standing alone. Because being alone with your dignity is infinitely better than being surrounded by people who make you feel worthless. That's the truth I learned. That's the message I want to leave you with. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make the impossible choice between family loyalty and self-respect? Have you ever been the invisible one, the one doing all the work while someone else took all the credit? Drop your story in the comments below. Your experience matters, and someone out there needs to hear that they're not alone. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships and boundaries, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about standing up, speaking out, and refusing to be silenced. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept anything less than what you deserve. Happy New Year, and may you all have the courage to choose yourselves.